Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, March 4th. There's a new print edition of the Santa Barbara Independent on the stands right now for those of you who are duly vaccinated and masked. And so we have invited our good friend Nick Welsh, the angry poodle himself, back. I was looking back, and you were the very first guest I had on my award-winning and highly popular series, Journal of the Plague Year, last year, just about a year ago this time. And the headline that came out of that, I was asking you about how the paper was doing financially and so on, and you said the wolf is at the door. So I guess the wolf is still at the door because you're getting kicked out of your office, I hear. Is that true?
Well, I don't know that we're getting kicked out, but it's the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So here I am back again. And the wolf isn't at the door, but we are walking out the door. We have a huge office relative to the number of people who are actually working in it. So a decision has been made, and we were lucky to find somebody to lease it out, which is great because that saves us, I don't know how much money, but a bunch. But the problem is, what do we do with the people who are actually working here who don't want to work at home, which is the news department for the most part, where actual physical proximity makes a difference. And
Sure,
you know,
it's right there on East Figueroa Street, right?
right across from Janine's, which shut its store, so
Or
maybe we're just
formerly, yeah.
following suit. So we have three people who work in the news department on a regular basis, and so we're hoping to find an office. Doesn't have to be nice, just has to be, where we can socially distance and have a computer set up, but, and preferably somewhere close to downtown. No lease. This is just interim because we're waiting for when the dust settles. And then everybody who wants to get back together, and work in the same place can. And at that time, we're hoping there will be a glut of office space on the market, and we will be able to find a place at a reasonable price. But
So,
who knows?
okay, so if people know about any office space downtown that might be suitable for a short period of time, transitional period, what should they do?
Paul, here, Nick Welsh, Nick at independent.com.
That's
Send it
easy
to
to
me, and then
remember.
I'll pass it up the food chain.
Okay.
Nick at Independent.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, as so many things in Santa Barbara, they're sort of this micro, but then when you step back, it's going to be very interesting as people are able to go out more and more, how many businesses which have been remote for a year actually end up going back to offices, because you can sure save a hell of a lot of money if you don't have that overhead. And a lot of businesses which are computer dependent have managed to get through without an office. So gee, I hope you get it back, because the newsroom, you really got to have a newsroom.
You really do, particularly if you're working with, uh, you know, reporters who are just sort of getting their feet on the ground, or if you're working with interns and trying to get them to evolve into reporters with their feet on the ground. And this very helpful for them, but for me, sort of a vampire of that kind of youthful energy. Um, it's invigorating to be working with other people, and when you're just working by yourself, there's a sort of a crushing quality to it. And I know some people are good at that, but the loneliness of the long distance runner, I've done and I'm over.
Yeah, no, and the other thing is, if you're in a room full of people who are working on the pay, it's like, geez, I got this, I can't figure out what to do about this. And then somebody says, well, I know a guy that knows a guy. And there's just a lot of cross pollination of sources and ideas and things like that.
And you don't get that through a Zoom conference, and you don't get that through an email or a Slack.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the stories you've been working on. And I'm particularly interested in this piece you had, not in this week, but last week, about UCLA's medical operation expanding its footprint into Santa Barbara, which is a huge story, which really hasn't been picked up much, hasn't got as much notice. but they have just, UCLA has just opened a cancer clinic on Quinto Street. And I was surprised to learn from your piece that this is actually one of three. One's open now, one's going to be opening in Goleta facilities that they're opening. What's the story here? And there seems like there's big implications for Sansom and Cottage.
Yeah, and I think maybe most immediately for Sansom, but for everybody. And it is, you know, UCLA has been moving up the coast for about, I don't know, 10 years now, 12 years. And they've been expanding their reach. And this is like within 6 months, we're going to have 3 new clinics opening from UCLA. That is big. That is sort of like, people from the moon landing on Earth. It's a big deal. And, you know, privately, people at Sansom are like, okay, this is a holy shit moment. We need to really pay attention. Nobody wants to say that, but cancer treatments and chemotherapy account for maybe 1/3 of the revenue that Sansom brings in.
So the little cancer center that could, which is really a
Right.
cool place, is providing about 1/3 of the revenue overall for Sansom.
Right. So Sansom has, to put it in another perspective, Sansom has about 200 doctors. About 15 of those doctors are engaged in cancer treatment. So 15 out of 200 is bringing in 30% of the revenues. And this is at a time when Sansom has been hurting, obviously from COVID. Now, what somebody reminded me yesterday is that early on, Sansom and UCLA had been negotiating about coming together. Sansom has been looking for a partner for some time.
They're an independent.
They're an independent, yeah, they're a unicorn out there. They're an independent nonprofit clinic. They're the only one in the state. Or they're the biggest one in the state, or they're one of something like that. And they definitely need to have a partner that's a hospital. And so UCLA had come up to them a while back, and for whatever reason, that didn't work. And then after that, they were playing footsies with Cottage, but Cottage and Sansom together was seen by the Federal Trade Commission as way too much of a monopolistic entity. The sort of background scuttlebutt is that Blue Shield in particular looked at Cottage and said, if Cottage has this kind of monopoly control already, and then they join in with Sansom, they are going to be, the word used, insufferable. And the rates would go up, and so they allegedly put the squash on the deal with the Federal Trade Commission. All of that is rank hearsay, but it makes sense.
Yeah. So this UCLA thing, so they've got a cardio clinic, according to your piece, on Coast Village Road, which opened in August.
Right.
They've just opened this cancer clinic, and they poached 2 of the top oncologists from the cancer clinic. And then in next August, they're going to open another clinic yet in Goleta.
Correct.
And this is all stealing market share away from Sansom. And is it an attempt by UCLA to put pressure on Sansom to merge with them under favorable conditions?
Well, one person I talked to said that ship has sailed, that they would wait, UCLA would wait to see Sansom crumpled on the side of the road, like so much roadkill, and then pick them up for nothing. I mean, but that's from somebody who regards the architect of all this from UCLA as sort of a cross between Mitch McConnell and Darth Vader. So that just, the fact that those comparisons came to mind suggests, how this is being regarded. At the same time, people do acknowledge that, it's been a long time, where Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara Medical Clinic has really not had to deal with sort of competitive intrusion.
So they're definitely a shark, and they're the shark in the water here, right?
Yeah.
So as speaking on behalf of the high volume usage of Sansom and the cancer clinic responsible community, what does this mean to me? Is it gonna, how will it affect my life? I guess it gives me more choices in a way.
It gives you more choices. I mean, one of the things that the Cancer Center is famous for is, okay, you don't just it's not just getting the chemotherapy fluids or the radiation. Those services will be available, but it also offers this whole range of, wellness and yoga and, AA sessions for cancer survivors and, just, you know, hang gliding and exercise and all of this sort of stuff that really
Oh, it's a huge menu of services.
a
Really,
huge,
it's extraordinary.
ridiculous, wonderful menu of services. Those will be available to UCLA patients. I think that decision has been made. So, whichever way you choose to go, um, you're not going to be cut off of those sort of supportive services.
So okay, but basically, what the UCLA clinic is doing is they're stealing. Excuse me. They're providing competition in terms of delivering the treatment, delivering chemo, which is
Right.
where the money is, isn't it? In oncology.
It's a funny thing. When you're a patient, you don't really think of it in that way. But when you step outside of it, yeah, that's really, you know, somebody would tell me that, every doctor in town, the cancer doctor, they're really responsible for about selling $6 million a year of fluids, of chemo, and the overhead is very low. So that's a big number, but the profit margin is low. So that's a big deal. And yeah, and the concern is because UCLA is so big. If you've ever been down to the Ronald Reagan Center in LA, I mean, it's huge. And then all the ancillary clinics they have. So they can buy in quantity and get price breaks that I think Sansom might have a hard time, or the Ridley Tree precisely, might have a hard time matching.
Yeah. And then the other thing that sort of jumped out at me, your piece, one of the doctors who's gone to UCLA, who's a longtime practitioner here in Santa Barbara, Dr. Greenwald, who is a specialist in lymphoma. Not, this accesses all of the research treatments, all of the trials
Right.
and studies that UCLA is doing too, to people who would go there.
Yeah, I mean, I can see. I mean, I can't remember the numbers, but he said, at Sansom, maybe there's 15 trials, clinical trials. At UCLA, there'll be like somewhere in the ballpark of 60 that would be relevant to his specialty. I'm not clear in my own head of, as a patient, and how many patients will find that clinical trial work relevant. But for the few that are on the cusp of, we don't know what to do, but we have this what's behind door number 3 option, that will make a very big difference.
Yeah. Well, that's a big story, and kudos to you. I mean, most of the time when you get an exclusive, I say, yeah, there's a reason that one's exclusive, but this is actually, uh, it's a big story, and I hope others pick up on it, and we'll certainly continue to keep an eye on it on the show. So let me ask you about a couple other things you're working on. So on the homelessness front, I guess there's tax talk now, both on the county and the city level, of a possible bed tax or another sales tax increase or something for homeless services. What's the latest on that?
Well, there was a big meeting of the Board of Supervisors. It was a special meeting. It was about homelessness and only about homelessness. And it was like, an industrial sized brain dump of everything that's been going on. And it was, they talked about everything under the sun, but what was most striking to me was what they didn't talk about. And it was like the whole meeting was a setup for why we need a new tax, a bed tax or a sales tax. But nobody would come out and say it, nobody addressed it. And when you talk to people who were behind the scenes in making this meeting happen, they would not acknowledge that a tax was being under discussion. It is, I think there is discussion about it. And the reason for that is in the last year, the county of Santa Barbara and all the government agencies and nonprofits combined spent somewhere on the ballpark of 42 million bucks trying to get homeless people inside.
And what was the latest count of homeless or unsheltered people that we have?
It's about 2,000.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't keep the numbers straight, but it's in the ballpark of 2,000. All those numbers are pretty sketchy. We don't know what's real. The problem with the 42 million number, which is just enough to get people like you, oh my God, getting into your inner Ernie Solomon.
Just doing some quick math here. That's $21,000 per homeless person. Go ahead.
You know, I'm sure we spend that, but the deal is a big chunk of that is one-time federal and state grant money, and it's sort of like the way it's been is like, okay, everybody, you've got 15 minutes to submit a grant, and then you've got 30 minutes to spend it, and you have to do it in the following 4 ways. And so all the local mucky-mucks scrambled to come up with a grant proposal that would fit the bill. So there's very little discretion over how that money can be spent. And it's not sustainable funding. The problem is, we've been talking about homelessness for over 35 years. It has achieved a critical mass, I think, in a large way because of COVID. What happened with COVID is sort of like the urban ecology that gives sustenance to the homeless population has collapsed. I mean, it's like the Serengeti has dried up and the elephants don't have a place to go anymore. You know, the food in the park programs evaporated. The shower programs evaporated. A lot of the volunteer programs out there gone because nobody wants to be around. And the big one is gyms. The cheap gyms where a lot of people who live in cars and whatnot go to get showers and maintain hygiene got shut down too. So there's a whole lot, and so people who could be out of sight, out of mind now aren't and now can't be. And then you throw in the Center for Disease Control saying you're not allowed to mess with the camps, leave the camps alone because
we have all these, and we've had all these fires.
So yeah, we have. I mean, the fire departments are saying we get about 3 fires a month from homeless camps. You know, that some of those fires are pretty significant, and you have a lot of overdose, situations, and the camps are so densely packed in some instances. When the EMT guys goes in there, they don't know. It's problematic resuscitating the people who are about to die.
Yeah, but okay, let me put my Mr. Cranky Pants hat on for just a moment. So as you point out, we've been talking and trying to deal with homelessness for over 35 years. I sort of date it to 1981 from San Francisco, but and I dare say that the amount of money spent from year to year is probably on a pretty, if not steep, certainly steady curve upward. And it seems like not only has nothing happened, the problem has gotten worse. So if there is this conversation about a new tax, if you put that piece together with what the current theory of homelessness is, which as I understand is housing first, what would change to improve the situation?
Well, you know, one of the things that kind of came out at last Tuesday's meeting is that the story is twofold. It really is the glass is half empty, maybe more like 9/10 empty, but it's also half full. And there was a lot, because what we see with our eyes is so dramatic. We don't see the progress that is taking place. So in the last year, 585 people who were on the streets somehow got into housing. Um, 55 new units for permanent supportive housing got built. Um, we opened up a lot of hotel rooms, not nearly enough, I would say, but enough so that 20,000 bed nights of service were provided. So we are doing a lot, and there are a lot of successes. The public defender's office, diverted 22 people who were charged with some criminal offense from jail because the underlying cause of their crime stemmed from their homelessness into some sort of housing diversion. But in order to get 22 people diverted into housing, you needed 400 contacts with them. That's highly labor intensive. It's really exhausting. But
And isn't it the case, and I don't hold me to these numbers, but I think they're generally true. Isn't it the case that about 20% of the homeless population takes about 80% of the money spent on it because of addiction, mental health, and alcohol related issues, particularly the mental health piece?
yeah, I mean, what the precise numbers are, the top five, the top five frequent flyers, $1 million Murrays, repeat offenders, whatever you want to call them, they clearly consume an inordinate amount of the pie. And so from a public policy perspective, it really poses a tough question, because you want to put your resources into the people who are really costing society the most in terms of resources, or do you want to put your money into people who are not nearly so dramatic, but with a little help, they can be kept in their apartments, for example, or they can be kept from becoming the $1 million Murrays. And so who do you help? And one of the other dogs that didn't bark at that meeting that really struck me is the safe parking program. And 43% of the people in the city of Santa Barbara who are homeless, some like 973 or whatever the number is, are living in their vehicles. 43% are living in their vehicles. And we have a really effective safe parking program in which, number of parking lots are set aside at night for just a small smattering of homeless people in their vehicles. And, they're regulated and watched and monitored, and they've really been operating quite effectively. And services are provided, and people gradually transition into permanent housing. That program could be expanded way more than it is. If you look around town, you wow, look at all those parking lots. And so when I watched that meeting, I thought, why aren't we getting those people into more parking lots, providing services, meals, whatever, showers, so that as many, that space, they could really make life a lot better for a lot of people, and could help manage the problem a lot better than it is now.
All right, so what's your best guess about this tax thing? City, county, both, what?
Whatever it is, it would just be a guess. I would imagine that if it was countywide, that's going to be extremely hard to sell. It's going to be much more expensive. So just tactically, I would think the city is feeling the effects far more acutely. But the problem is taxes are never popular. Taxes for homeless people. Oh my God, if you solve one problem, you're just going to have two more in their place. What's the point?
And plus the
Um,
bed tax is gonna be a tough sell. There's just not a lot of tourism coming anyway.
yeah, there's not a lot of tourism, but the tourism, we do know the tourists will come back at some day. But I'm sure that the hotel motel lobby will not be thrilled by that idea. Nobody will be thrilled. And then you have an election coming up, as you have pointed out many times. And who wants to run on the platform of let's, tax ourselves, take care of the homeless? But the fact of the matter is, everybody talks about the homeless. Everybody who runs for office talks about the homeless. Oh my God, we want to do something. But finally, we have an opportunity to do something, and everybody goes, "Oh no, we can't do it." So make up your mind. You want to do something. Everybody wants to go to heaven. Nobody wants to die. If you want to solve the problem, you're going to have to spend some money. We're already spending the money.
Yeah. And of course, the city is what, 5 million in the hole now, or
Yeah, the
5
city, I think it's more like almost 7 million in the hole.
and that's in the current year budget, or is that the projected budget for next year?
You're asking me stuff I can never keep straight, but yeah.
The fiscal year begins July 1. Okay, all right, let me ask you something else, and this will be easier for you because since you are a widely known shill for the bicycle community and in secret league with Rob Dayton to have us all overrun. So now we're paying, and having junked up State Street with the parklets, which, as you point out, is a word no one heard about a year ago, had ever heard of a year ago. Now we're painting wide green stripes down the middle of the street. Is it true there's going to be pink glitter thrown in the green paint as well? What's going on with that?
Well, what people have, while you were worried about the power of the unions and the PLA and all that kind of stuff, you failed to note that Sherwin-Williams, the paint monopoly, has secretly infiltrated City Hall traffic planners and is striping everything they can in iridescent green, which is, I guess, the international color of bike lanes everywhere. So,
there's
it's not
two,
my
right?
favorite color.
There's the east side to west side bicycle freeway that you've been advocating for forever. That's one thing. But then they're going to put green paint on the State Street Promenade, are they not?
Well, not only are they going to, they have.
They have.
And so there's this, it's in the intersection, and it's these sort of pulses of green paint in successive lengths that if you look at them all suddenly, it'll give you a big epileptic seizure. And the idea is that it will remind people as they go through the intersections who are on skateboards or bicycles that they're supposed to hew to the center of the road. And then the paint suddenly stops, leaving you in an island of what the hell is going on here until you come to the next intersection where you're reminded, oh, hew to the center. And in some places, that's just sort of naturally what you would do. But if you get up to like the 1100 block of State Street where the parklets are like big ranchos that encroach into the middle of the road, there is no middle of the road you can hew. But it's kind of lively and fun and psychedelic and ugly all at once. So
well, I don't usually truck with the Historic Landmarks Commission or the Architectural Review Board, but I understand several heads have exploded in those agencies over this.
Well, Historic Landmarks, I think, is feeling like the bastard stepchild of the city review boards, and with good reason. That Rob Dayton, who you mentioned, who is sort of the bicycle uber alles planner in City Hall, has sort of run roughshod over them on several times, and he of course says, "Oh, I didn't mean to," and I certainly respect them, and they are wonderful, and I love them, etc. But yeah, they are they're not feeling the love.
Yeah. And the other thing is, as of course I've been under house arrest for a year, so I have no idea, but I thought this was supposed to be a pedestrian promenade, but it sounds like the pedestrians are getting completely squeezed out of the way on behalf of the evil empire of the two-wheel community.
Well, now, okay, all right. Now I have to, yeah. So here's the deal. It's like all of a sudden we have no cars on State Street, and pedestrians on State Street. So you have this like, all right, how do we accommodate pedestrians and bicycles and parklets all at once? And it's like not necessarily intuitively obvious. Um,
I
so,
have an idea. How about Anacapa and Chapala streets? What?
well, bicycles have always been on State Street, and I
Yeah.
think
So were
particularly,
cars.
huh?
So,
But
so cars were always on State Street too, but now they're not.
okay, but let me throw a little wrinkle here. So now you have the electric bikes, that the e-bikes, the e-rental bikes, and one of the promises or potential that they offer here is that if you come to State Street and you want to like go from top to bottom, they function the way the shuttle did. So you can zoom from the 1200 block down to the funk zone and sort of go by and imbibe and whatever it is you like to do and that spends money. Um, they are the vehicle that you can do it with conveniently. And so if you can't use State Street, you're going to rob the merchants or the whole commerce connection of a real vehicle. So I think you really do need to have bikes on State Street.
All right. All
And I
right.
think there's room that everybody can get along.
Sure. I'm gonna stay at home. I afraid the hell
I think you should bring your horse.
I've
Bring your
been-
horse.
Yeah, what about horses on State Street?
Well, here is the question. What happens to Fiesta with all this?
Yeah,
What
exactly.
happens to Solstice with all of this? I don't know.
That's it. Those are very good questions. All right, a couple things real quick. So we have the first more or less independent redistricting. Now this is where everybody turns off their.
Oh man.
Which they're the most dread word in the English language, reapportionment. But they're going to redraw the maps for the 5 supervisorial districts. And there is, in fact, because of population shifts, the possibility that the balance of power on the board would shift from South Coast to North County, from liberal to conservative. That's the bottom line of the thing. But they're fighting now about who their lawyer is going to be. Who's going to be the key staff person on this? And there's a guy who represented former Supervisor Doreen Farr in some endless litigation about her election, and also, I guess, former Supervisor Willie Chamberlain as well. But it's all centered.
Bill Wallace, yeah.
I mean, Bill Wallace, excuse me. But it's all centered in IV, right? Isn't that kind of the critical question? Where does IV go?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the movie Chinatown. It's Chinatown, Jake. Well, in Santa Barbara politics, it's IV, and IV has been the teeter-totter tip point for political power for a long time. And if Isla Vista is no longer in the 3rd district, who knows what the hell is going to happen? And certainly, the liberal South Coast balance of power will be very much challenged, and so that might explain the intensity of the pettiness of the disputes that are taking place. Every centimeter, every crumb is going to be bitterly fought over. One appointee to the commission, Lolly Katz, who is a friend of mine and very outspoken and nobody's patsy, she quit. She was appointed and she quit. Somebody made a Public Records Act request on her cell phone record because the allegation was made that she had been texting during a meeting and they wanted to know who she was talking to. Was she taking her orders from the Kremlin? And they wanted to see the Kremlin notes. And Lolly claims that she wasn't even on the phone at the time, so there was no records to provide. And but the fact that she was going to have to put up with that, she said, "I'm done. I don't need this." So they've already replaced her. Now you're fighting over Fred Rucher, who is a very accomplished elections law lawyer. But of course, if I'm Andy Caldwell, I hate Fred Rucher because Fred Rucher got Bill Wallace. There was, he had won the election against Willie Chamberlain, who was a conservative rancher. Bill Wallace, the famous, liberal environmentalist. but the election results were so close that there had to be a recount. And Wallace only won on the recount. Then fast forward to Doreen Farr, who you referenced, who ran against Sandy Ned's guy named Steve Pappas. Steve Pappas made all these allegations of wholesale voter fraud in Isla Vista. He was very much a precursor to what we heard from Donald Trump. The judge in that case got so impatient with that total utter lack of any substantiating evidence. He was really, I mean, this is like not a liberal judge, but he was really, I mean, outspokenly, at the end of it, really just disgusted with
It went on forever. I mean,
it went on forever. And so Fred Wucher,
not as long as my litigation, but it went on for a long.
Right. That one started what in
2008. Yeah.
2008, and they were still, and Fred Wucher was still fighting in 2013 to get his attorney.
Right. She was already reelected, right?
He'd already been reelected. And so because he was still trying to get paid off in 2013, which is within 8 years of some magic cutoff line, Andy Caldwell's attorney is saying, you can't be the attorney.
So if I look at it from Caldwell's perspective or that perspective, it looks to me like Wucher is the sort of camel's nose under the tent that's going to ensure that IV ends up where it's going to be most beneficial to the Democrats, correct?
If I was Andy Caldwell, I would see Fred Wucher and I'd say, oh my God, this guy is too good. He's gotten two people that we've tried to get bumped from the 3rd district, reinstated or kept them there. He's formidable. I don't want him.
Yeah.
So it should be noted that Mike Gazzoni, who is the county council, and he is a total belts and suspenders guy when it comes to being cautious and careful. He said there is no reason why Fred Wucher cannot serve.
No legal reason.
There's no legal reason.
Right, and I found myself extraordinarily agreeing with Das Williams when he said, "Hey, if it's supposed to be an independent commission, we shouldn't be in the business of deciding that they can't hire who they want to hire as a staff person." But it seems like this was an attempt to, as they always are, take the politics out of reapportionment, but it hasn't quite succeeded on that.
Okay, and let me just throw in here. There's no way to ever take the politics out of reapportionment. It is inherent. But this whole commission was formed in response to your friend over at News Talk, who always writes about how we don't have to worry about COVID because it's not a real threat. Well, before he was saying, trust me, I know about COVID because I've done statistics because I coached my daughter's softball team. He created a committee. Restore Integrity in Government. And it was designed to give the Republicans an edge of more representation on the commission than they had amongst registered voters. And that was a big fight. And it's worth noting that the acronym for this organization, Return Integrity in Government, is RIG. And it was just hilarious that the best the Republicans come up with as an acronym is RIG.
Well, it's just, they're not hiding. I mean, that's
Bruce in advertising.
Trump has proved that the great political superpower is utter shamelessness. I mean, it's like what you just, so what? Stop me.
I didn't plain sight.
That's right. All right, last thing I got to ask you, you had this lovely and very, very sad piece about a young man named Angel Castillo, 17 years old, who was one of the two kids who were killed by gunfire on January 3rd. Interview with his mom, which was very sad. What's happening with that case? I mean, it's just that, we had this other double murder or shooting in Goleta, that everybody was all over that. It was solved. We just haven't heard anything about this investigation. It's been months.
It's been about 2 months now. I mean, the shooting was, I believe, on February 4th, or on January 4th. And yeah, 2 kids on the east side were shot and killed. Angel Castillo was one of them, and 2 others were wounded. About a week after that, 2 kids in Goleta were shot and killed in a drug deal that went bad. And that crime was solved sooner. Now, a lot of people on the east side, predominantly Latino, were saying, what gives? You know, a couple of Latino kids get shot and we don't hear anything, but a couple of white kids who get shot, the newspaper articles are their whole lives were ahead of them. And, you know, and only at the very tail end of the article is it intimated a drug deal gone bad,
Right.
whereas the headlines are gang shooting on the east side. It should be noted, that there are 2 separate law enforcement agencies. It should also be noted that in the Goleta case, the cops had, or the sheriffs had a cell phone communication between the murderer and the victims. And cell phone records kind of are, they're not a smoking gun, but they're next best thing. That being said, there was a lot of frustration by people in the community. Alejandro Gutierrez, who is the council member who represents the east side, felt the need to, talk to the police and say, you need to do a better job communicating with the parents, because the parents aren't feeling they're getting, whatever talk you can have. Now, the fact of the matter is, in a murder investigation, cops can't say anything. They're not going to say anything. They're not going to tell the family, oh, yes. But what I'm hearing, and again, who knows how reliably, is that this particular one is being pursued aggressively, and that even within the police department, there is like a huge sort of tone of silence amongst that's being imposed. And if you don't need to know, you aren't being told.
Yeah, and of course we're in this transition space with the chief leaving, Lori Luna leaving, and Barney Malekian coming in as the interim chief. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it as well, but hopefully there'll be some answers on that one.
Hopefully there'll be some answers. Yeah, I mean, that was a hard interview to do. I mean, it was one of those things where you just go, yeah, it's an East Side kid. His gang. Well, of course he gets shot. Well, the problem is that that's just that mindset perpetuates the violence, and so I thought, wow, who are these kids that got shot? And the mom was just devastating in terms of painting a picture of what a sweetie her son was. And
she couldn't go into the hospital when he was dying, and found out from the friend, another mom, by text or something. I mean,
right. No, it was awful.
It was
awful.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get some answers. All right, brother. Well, thanks for bringing us up to date on what you've been working on, and some things that in our news environment, are not getting echoed enough, and I think ought to be. So, all right. So plenty of free parking. If anybody's got some office space,
we don't need
Nick a call. That's nick@independent.com. And the home number again? No.
From Hawaii, call. Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Hey, thank you very much.